Good evening, and welcome to our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri, with our brother Alok. Namaste. We are still in Canto 11, Book 2, the book of the Traveler of the Worlds, the kingdoms and godheads of the greater mind. And we are on page 272, about 8 lines from the bottom. This greater truth is foreign to our thoughts.
So, as we can see, we are climbing the stairway of thought. And thought, in the mystic sense, is a vehicle. So, we'll see that as we grow and evolve, one of the things that begins to change is the nature of thoughts. And it becomes a vehicle to take us to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And that's what is being described here. Till we reach a point where this vehicle has to be discarded. Then you enter into that state which is the silence, first the silent self, the self of mind, and then the silence of the unknowable. So this is the vehicle, and it begins to change from a bus full of all kinds of crowd to a more sophisticated bus, car, aircraft, rocket, jet, satellite. Actually, these are images one can see in visions and dreams. So it's not just jokingly, like ancient rishis. They would see other images, but modern times we will see another kind of image. Like if you see an image of a satellite in which you are traveling, so it is like you are into a thought which takes us beyond the boundaries of the earth into the vastness of the cosmic being. So that's how it will be. Or if you see an aircraft, so you are still somewhere, hovering a little above earth in the higher mind probably.
But the train is still popular.
Train is still popular, yes. Train is about the journey.
Right.
More than the vehicle, it's the journey. So, missing a train, changing tracks. So it's very interesting. It's a whole world. So thought is a vehicle, and we had read last time. I'll start from a few lines from above. But hidden, but denied to mortal grasp, mystic, ineffable is the spirit's truth. Unspoken, caught only by the spirit's eye. There is no way you can convince the mind caught in the grip of. Now Shubhendra is using the word mortal grasp. It doesn't mean those who are in intuitive mind are physically immortal. But they have started touching those realms of immortality where their mind can remain immortal for a long, long time and continue to influence earth. So that, like Swami Vivekananda's mind, thoroughly intuitivized mind.
Yes.
So he is using the word mortal grasp here in terms of that. So how do we see it? What is the condition required? No amount of breathing exercises, pranayama, Sirsasana is going to help here. There is another asana which we have to do. And that asana is the most difficult of all. When naked of ego and mind, it hears the voice. It looks through light to ever greater light and sees eternity and sphering life. So it begins to move into a more luminous realm and towards more and more light. The light continues to increase, and then it sees that otherwise we see life and blank all around. We don't know what really surrounds it. But then it sees what surrounds time, and the movement of time is the eternal. It begins to see eternity and sphering light. That's how the Vedic mystics describe that Diti is surrounded by Aditi. The divided consciousness is ensphered by the undivided consciousness. This greater truth is foreign to our thoughts. And now comes some very marvelous lines which are completely shattering in every sense.
Yes.
Today only I remember I had an email exchange about the law of karma. So someone had asked, but we are told about the law of karma this way, that way. So I was writing what Shubhendra and Mother have said. It's essentially a law of evolution. It's not a law of judgment and punitive measures, but a law of evolution. So you grow, and through constant learning experience. And basically, the reward and punishment aspect of karma is instantaneous, but it's not a reward and punishment. It's about you either blossom or you shrivel. That's all. And that cuts away the delight or opens you to delight. So, what about those things that this life you did something and that life? It's the unfinished experiences. We are on a learning curve. We entered a classroom, but we needed more to learn from it to grow or to gain from that experience. We couldn't. So, unfinished curves of evolution take place in another life. And it's not about reward and punishment, but a process of evolution. So, here we have this where a free wisdom works, they seek for a rule. So there has to be a rule. And sometimes the rules are made so hard. Oh, you lost this money because you must have lent it to someone. So once long back I humorously asked, I said, so you mean it's we give back with interest, or what is it about? But we want to, because that's how our mind operates. Instead of letting our mind become like God's by a process of identification and grace, we try to reduce the mind of God to our own mind. So he must be punishing, he must be rewarding, he must be doing this, he must be doing that.
But the rules of religion have been founded
all
in the
religions,
same way.
because otherwise they cannot operate. See, the moment you say freedom, it is unnerving. It can be devastating, like the sea swimming. You want a way, there is no way. There need not be a way. You are being carried. We always want a way where I do something, then it's a way. But where you are being carried through everything, how do you get an idea that this is way? All right, divine allows you. I often give this example as I move down. If at night you take a walk on the seashore, you'll see when you turn, towards the sea, you have the moonbeam falling. Now, right up to the end, you will feel the moonbeam is falling right where you are walking. So you think it's your path. But you encounter those experiences. But actually, it is the vast sea unrolling itself. We can see only a small fragment. We see this is the path. But who knows? A lot more happens in everyday life than when we sit in meditation. So those who sit in meditation and move through that, they feel, oh, by meditation I had this. But actually it is everyday events of life which are carrying us.
Mother says one drop of sincerity is worth more than meditation.
Yes, oceans of theories. Where a free wisdom works, they seek for a rule, or we only see a tripping game of chance. Because then if we don't understand rule, then it must be chance. But there is something else. The fancy, the wonder of the mother's whims. A wisdom which does not depend on the rules of the game. In fact, there are no rules of the game. The highest truth is this, always. You decide, your mind fixes the rules, so divine says, okay, I'll play according to this rule. You believe that there is reward and punishment, divine will meet you as a reward and punishment. You believe it is grace carrying you, you will experience grace carrying you. So it's amazing, and very difficult for human mind to believe, because it always has learned that my efforts with the ego sense. Animals don't believe that. But the mind and the ego sense believes it's me, my efforts. That's it. It cannot imagine that grace can carry you through everything. It's beyond its comprehension. It will often call it laziness, all kinds of things. Or a labor in chains forced by bound nature's law, an absolutism of dumb, unthinking power. So these are the three things which human beings say. Either that there is a spiritual energy and there is a cause and effect rules, spiritual set of rules. Or you say it's chance, it's random. Or you say that there is a mechanical energy which is operating and you are bound by its rules. If you eat khatta, you will have a sore throat. That's how it is. Boils down to that. But actually it's none of these, but something else. There is a logic in the infinite, but a logic which human mind cannot comprehend with its limited vision and limited seeing.
And Sri Aurobindo uses effect and cause.
Yes.
Not cause and effect.
Yes. That reminds me of, his little story. Because again, someone had asked me that if there is no such law of karma, why did Angad, was Bali's son in Ramayana, and it is said that he was the man who was reborn as the Vyad, the hunter, who mistakenly shot an arrow in Krishna's feet, and therefore Krishna died. And the logic of it is traced back to this fact that Angad carried that resentment inside, and this was a way that had to be the law of karma caught up even with Rama. So, as Krishna avatar, the arrow was shot. So, it was like, what about my comment? So I said, for me, it's a very different story altogether. Yes, Angad carried some resentment, but we should not forget how the Lord would look at it. Now, for the Lord, Angad is a faithful servant. The way he has served Lord Rama is amazing. Now, in the entire Mahabharata, there is no entry of Angad. Such a wonderful person whom, divine knows so much to him. So he says, okay, the last act of my drama, I will make you enter the scene. Now, why I am saying is that why he becomes the last act. Because very often people say, oh, Krishna died after this arrow, but something else happened. And Shri Krishna gave him the charge of carrying his relics down the generations. Sri Krishna's relics are only at one place. I think people know about it. So, Angad turned Vyad in next life, shoots an arrow. Even his name is symbolic, Jara, old age, if you want to look at it symbolically. And then Shri Krishna says, you don't have to feel bad about it. When my body is given to ashes, you carry the relics, and those relics are carried down the generations, eventually enshrined in Jagannath Puri. That's how the whole story goes. So, it's a grace. It's not like just an exhaustion of karma. Exhaustion of energy is one part, but there is something greater. So, there are so many ways you can look at it when you look at it from the point of view of the grace. Audacious in their sense of God-born strength, these dare to grasp with their thought truth's absolute. So this is the thought which is right into the apex. By an abstract purity of godless sight. Now, what is this godless sight? See, the gods invariably have an angle of vision. They are two good guys, they are good guys. So they always have an angle of vision which eliminates the dark side of life. They cannot see it. So gods cannot understand why an asura is blessed by the Lord and lifted up. It's very difficult for the gods to comprehend that. They don't know the game of transformation. They don't know that for the Divine Mother, all are portions and aspects of herself. So this godless side is a pure side which is devoid of all these virtues, aspects, angles of vision, but something which sees the totality. That's how it's a godless sight. Again it comes by a percept nude, intolerant of forms. It'll give a form of speech for expression, but it may be a very different form of speech the next moment. Sri Aurobindo says that what I say to X applies to X. What I say to Y applies to Y. And even to them at different stages, he will say different things. That's why it's so difficult and, actually impossible in a certain sense to quote Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Unless you have read everything and, got the drift of it, it can be so misleading. Because it's said in a certain context. So what is the way? Mother says, when you read my writings, or of course Sri Aurobindo's writings, go behind the words and touch the state of consciousness. Now, if we touch that state of consciousness, the whole thing changes, but that comes either, ultimately by grace. Then you see what Sri Aurobindo is writing in a letter is a very, very different thing than what appears from the words which are put into our head and mixed with our own limited understanding. Then it's a very, very different thing. I could give a number of examples. One of that, which someone was also again quoting some time back, there was also this, aphorism, for example, that do not listen to even God's luminous angels, which is so true. At one level, it's so true. Now, during that time, there are letters of like that when Sri Aurobindo has written. Now, he is very clearly marked out that don't let either a guru or somebody come between you, a angle of vision, half-hearted thing. At the same time, there is a paradox that within the ashram itself, the Divine Mother and Sri Aurobindo made people write and speak on their behalf. So there is always a rule being overridden by another rule, and that's not a rule but a grace which empowers human beings. That we will see here coming up in intuitive mind. This is something that can be empowered by the divine fiat. But at the same time, in general, he would caution us not to do certain things. So,
especially to make a rule.
yes. They brought to mind what mind could never reach. So mind has to just open and receive. And then it will give form. And hope to conquer truth's supernal base. A stripped imperative of conceptual phrase, architectonic and inevitable, translated the unthinkable into thought. So here thought is born almost, out of that state of consciousness which is in that vastness. And you cannot put it into any kind of rigid form and make it a dogma. If you do that, then you are doing injustice. That's why Mother and Sri Aurobindo's words should never be turned into they said this and quoted in this way. To turn them into rigid dogmas is to do great disservice. You have to just stay quiet and slowly the meaning will emerge. And it takes time. It's much deeper than what appears from the words or analysis of words.
Especially with Savitri.
Yeah, absolutely. Architectonic. It's like the very beginning is architectonic is like the base of architecture, something from which all structures and forms have emerged. So it is that base where everything is ready, just like a creative writer has like a creative enthusiasms, and then there is a concept, and then there is a perception, then there are words, thoughts, like that. A silver-winged fire of naked subtle sense. So not only thought, but even the senses undergo a transmutation. An ear of mind withdrawn from the outwards rhymes, discovered the seed sounds of the eternal word.
Oh.
So thus far, tantric yoga and nad yoga goes. Intuitive mind. Most yogas that I am aware of, which take help of these seed sounds, go up to this state. They cannot climb beyond. Because then you have to drop that help. It's very difficult. So they use a mantra or they use not mantra, this is about seed sounds. And using those seed sounds, they can climb up to there. That is the birthplace of these seed sounds. The rhythm and music heard that built the worlds and seized in things the bodiless will to be. So this music that built the worlds is called in Nad Yoga as Anahad Nad. Actually this Nad has, there are two meanings to this. One is Anahad. So some people take it as it's Anahat, means you unstruck sound. Sound which emerges without, otherwise for sound you need to strike against something. Or it is Anahad. I prefer this understanding. Anahad means actually it is limitless. So out of the vast limitless, there is the first stir, the vibration which is emerging. And they touch that base. It is a very powerful, many ancient yogas, Sufi mystic yoga and saints yoga, it follows this path and reaches up to the intuitive mind. The illimitable they measured with numbers, rods, and traced the last formula of limited things. In transparent systems, body termless truths, the timeless made accountable to time and valued the incommensurable supreme. So everything, as we have seen, is explained. But the difference is, in illumined mind, there are a number of conceptual phrases which will come to explain. Here, because it is going to the origin of thing, one sound, one formula, which will explain everything else. For example, Jagat Mithya Brahma Satya. Now this is one formula. How does it explain everything? All this is illusion. Now you don't have to actually explain anything. What has created it? Mind has created it. So it will be like that. Whereas if you go in the illumined mind, you will have gods, goddesses, each having a certain power. The yogis on those planes will operate in this way. To park and hedge the ungrasped infinitudes, they erected absolute walls of thought and speech and made a vacuum to hold the one. So that's how this world operates. And what is beyond it? Beyond it, it's a vacuum. There is nothingness. So you can call it nothingness or you can call it one. Depends upon the angle of vision. If you are a Buddhist nihilist, you will say nothingness. Or a Shaiva Tantra. Or if you are a classical Advaitin, you will say one, Ekameva Ditva, of which nothing can be said. In their sight, they drove towards an empty peak, a mighty space of cold and sunlit air. Now it's very interesting why it is cold. You see, it's an impersonal truth. What is missing there is the heart of the Divine Mother. That is a mystery. And Ashwapati will cross all these layers. And then we have the description, even as he stood on being's naked edge, that which he was seeking drew near. And then he describes the heart coming in. One came and she took into herself world and nature and soul. That you can't find here. So you have sunlight, but you have cold peak, austere peak. They miss out on love. Mother says several times why these yogis could not conceive of transformation is because they didn't have the power of transformation. They never knew what it is. It is love. Even those who went by Bhakti Marga, they stopped at a personal adoration of the deity. But the boundless love that works in creation, they could not find. They were not keen to find. To unify their task, excluding life, which cannot bear the nakedness of the vast, they made a cipher of multitude. In negation found the meaning of the all, and in nothingness the absolute positive. So on one side Jagat Mithya, and on other side Ekameva Dvityam. So this was the perfect formula. But the moment you have to explain the world, they came back to the illumined mind. Gods, goddess, etc., etc. But still the darkness, the evil cannot be understood. So they going still further down in the higher mind, there was a bright power and a dark power. Going still further down in the rational mind, well, it's all a game of chance. Going still further down, it's imagination. All these demons and angels. Going still further down, don't bother about all this. I have to bother about my everyday life, physical mind. But there is a step beyond it where you see the perfect synthesis and harmony. That is missing there. So, but they have reached pretty high where single formula. A single law, simplest the cosmic theme, compressing nature into a formula. Their titan labor made all knowledge one, a mental algebra of the spirit's ways, an abstract of the living divinity. You can't bind the Divine Mother to any rule or formula. But they made a formula of the living divinity. The moment you say ki everything is according to rule, then divinity is no more free. It is bound. So they bound everybody, including Krishna. There are scriptures which say Krishna is suffering in hell because of the Mahabharata war. So once somebody asked me, I said, yes, who else has the power and the capacity to go into hell? Hell is where you need sweetness and delight. So Krishna can go anywhere. It speaks highly of Krishna. It's because human mind works like that. They have to suffer. They have to go through this because there is no other way you can explain. Even the Lord Jagannath's absence of, it's very silly. You see how scriptures and religion, if you see the idol of Lord Jagannath, Balbhadra and Subhadra, maybe you have noticed it's incomplete. Okay, it's So it is said that their hands and one of the theories, hands and legs are gone away because of the karma of their own karma. So they have to, Mahabharata. So they have to dissolve it. This is a very gory explanation. Better explanation is it's an sign of an imperfection which is yet to be born. That's a better explanation, because the murtikar who is making the idol stops. He has given that to the king. Don't be curious and try to intrude. But he grows curious because months have gone by, and one day he knocks at the door and Vishwakarma vanishes. So it is still imperfect because mental curiosity has intervened. This is a better explanation. And if you have to bring in karma, then the Lord Jagannath is taking the whole world unto himself. And it's not his karma, but the karma of the entire, all the energies of the creation that he is carrying within and leading it towards perfection. So there are so many ways of looking at it, but there is a tendency to bind to one formula. Their titan labor made all knowledge one, a mental algebra of the spirit's ways, an abstract of the living divinity. Here the mind's wisdom stopped. It felt complete because it has arrived at the perfect formula of God, imprisoned him. For nothing more was left to think or know. In a spiritual zero it sat throned and took its vast silence for the ineffable. See, this is important because several times I have had interaction with people who were devotees of certain big saints. I won't take the name, but huge following. And not one or two, but quite a few I know. And whenever they asked about transformation, they drew a blank. They would give some reason or the other. That no, this world is going on, it will carry on like this forever and forever. I have a very simple understanding about this because they don't know love. They don't know the transforming power of love. So it's not possible. They know human love and all that, which is a bondage and ignorance from which you have to emerge. But they don't know that power of the mother's love. So the whole thing moves within this spiritual zero. This was the play of the bright gods of thought. They are luminous beings, no doubt, attracting into time the timeless light, imprisoning eternity in the hours. So what it means, imprisoning eternity in the hours? There is a moment in which something happens or something takes place. And our mind has a tendency to turn it into a formula for all times. It's a very dangerous thing. Now I'll give you one example. It's very interesting. I read vision of one of, the lady who had started Hablik. I think it was her vision or it was Amal Kiran's wife. I may be mistaken. One of the two. But it's very interesting vision that it's 1974 and they are going into mother's room and suddenly they have a vision of the Divine Mother, one of them. Now, and the mother comes and says, because all this is going on inside that, mother used to be there, now, she's not there in the room. And the mother comes and says, I am no more confined to my room, I am everywhere. Some of these that she is spread out all around. Now, it does not mean as the human mind would say that there is no importance of visiting the mother's room. It doesn't mean that. That's how the human mind will make another formula and try to turn it into another narrow understanding. Yes. It means that this place, because it contains her, she has done her tapasya, it contains those luminous, those tremendous supramental vibrations, which is what she spoke about samadhi. The supramental vibrations are most intense here. Yeah. But at the same time, we can't limit their working to a geographical space. Because she is working everywhere. Wherever there is an opening, she is working. And especially after 1956.
Yeah. But this has changed since the early days.
Yeah.
In the early days, Nalini would say, don't go out of the ashram.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. Things change because they evolve. Now, but we fix things in a certain, which took place in a certain context of time. That's what I meant, that time, trapping the time, eternity into time.
Yes.
At one place, Sri Aurobindo says in Gita's introduction to Gita, which is originally in Bengali, translation is there in English. He says that Sri Krishna created the Rashtra, Bharat. And then he says if Sri Krishna were to come again, it's very interesting, were to come again, who knows? He will be on the side of a world unity. So you can't go by Krishna in that avatar. This because many times people say second coming of Christ. So once I had this discussion, written a short story also. I said if Christ came, will we recognize him? We'll expect him to speak Hebrew and to tell everybody, are you reading the Bible? Probably he'll be happy if you said, sir, I think the days of Bible are over, I want something else. Who knows? Because he is not limited by an action in a certain period of time. We limit him.
Yes.
He will not be, Sri Krishna will not necessarily wear dhoti. He may wear something else. Today's times, times change, evolve. He may not use the peacock feather. Nowadays, animal activists will probably file a case if they see Krishna with the peacock feather. So the Lord knows somebody will file a court case. So, catching eternity in time, but these gods do it. They fix it for all period of time. This they have planned to snare the feet of truth in an aureate net of concept and of phrase, and keep her captive for the thinker's joy in his little world built of immortal dreams. You see this thinker's joy. There are people in India I have seen who every day morning will religiously read a particular scripture. It's their bread and butter. But maybe even 1/700th of the sloka of the Gita, if they were to put into practice, life would be very different. Thinker's joy. That's why the Gita has given an antidote, or rather a means to transcend itself. And Sri Aurobindo points that out in Essays on the Gita as well as in the Synthesis of Yoga. In Essays on the Gita, he points out in every scripture there are temporal things and there are eternal truths. And Synthesis, he says, ultimately you have to go beyond the word.
Yes.
And he quotes the Gita, Shabd Brahma Ati Vartate. What language does God speak? Why only Sanskrit? Why not Tamil? You know that story of Amrita? Somebody told me.
That one.
They were all gods. Sanskrit, gods speak in Sanskrit. So Amrita, no, you don't know the full truth. When they speak to human beings, they speak in Sanskrit. Between themselves, they speak Tamil. It breaks your conceptions.
Yeah.
Or that little girl from Odisha who says, God knows Odia. Why? Because whenever I pray in Odia, she answers. What language does God know? Is he a slave of language? Mother says, do you think I have to learn Tamil now to understand? So she knows the dumb heart of atom, of flowers and everything. But this is the play of the thinker's joy. There must she dwell, mewed in the human mind. It's like another word for imprisonment in a certain sense. An empress, prisoner in her subject's house. Now you see some of the asuras who tried to capture the powers of the great goddess and keep her in their house. Even Ravana wanted Parvati and Shiva to come to Lanka, and he said, I have built a golden house for you. Because they want these powers to become captive. Adored and pure and still on his heart's throne, his splendid property cherished and apart, in the wall of silence of his secret muse, immaculate in white virginity, the same forever and forever one, is worshipped changeless goddess through all time. These are the ones who become cult leaders. A cult in the highest sense, not in the limited sense. They start sects, and it is through them that you can approach. They have captured her within their own formulas. thus alone and not otherwise. That's how these sects thrive. And then he becomes an intercessor, not from thought point of view, but between the divinity and you. Just like symbolically in a temple it is the priest, here it becomes the master. They are great beings at intuitive mind, but still they are limited beings. The Divine Mother is still beyond. So it's a preparation for that. He is taking us toward that climax, which will come on next to next page. Or else, a faithful consort of his mind, assenting to his nature and his will, she sanctions and inspires his words and acts, prolonging their resonance through the listening ears. Companion and recorder of his march, crossing a brilliant tract of thought and life, carved out of the eternity of time. This is a true experience. I know people who actually had the experience of Sri Aurobindo and at another time of the Mother, literally telling them that whatever you promise will be fulfilled by me. I knew this experience in another context, but I heard this from recently when I went to one of the Odisha places, that once Babaji Maharaj had come, Baba Ramakrishna Das and Champaklalji, and they were all joking around with Babaji Maharaj. Champaklalji was sitting quietly. Then suddenly Champaklalji stops them and asks for a paper to write. And he writes, the mother has told me, to Champaklalji, whatever Babaji says, I will fulfill it. So it's not an ordinary state. It's a very high state of consciousness where the Divine Mother comes down to the Bhakta's level, to that level, and says, I will fulfill. Whatever way, whatever your concept of the Divine, he comes and says, okay, I will do this. And it becomes, even when he knows that it's a limitation, like Sri Krishna and Arjuna, he fulfills. So we have to go beyond it, but still,
I had that experience with Sri Aurobindo. But I couldn't quite make out exactly what he said. He said, it seemed like two things. We shall give you all you want, or we shall always care for you.
So this goes to the next level, where whatever you promise is fulfilled by God.
Yes.
It can be to anyone. It is literally giving the power of granting a boon.
Yes.
Because now it becomes the Divine's responsibility to fulfill. I was going to say bounden duty. She says the words away. How dare. But that's how this world is. A witness to his high triumphant star, her Godhead servitor to a crowned idea. Her Godhead. She seems to, okay, fine, I'll do what you want me to do. There is a story in Devi Puran where actually the Divine Mother, because she has promised an Asur Bhakta that I'll defend you whenever you call me. So he calls. And who is against her is Shiva, because Shiva wants to kill this fellow. And so what she does, she tells Shiva that please, I have no choice. Shiva says, I also have no choice. So the Divine Mother swallows Shiva. There's such a story like that. If you go through it, it'll sound very strange. She knows that this fellow is doing something which is... But she will use everything for evolutionary purposes. That is the supramental vision. But that is not explained in any of these scriptures because they don't have that total vision.
But the crowned idea is so human.
Ground idea. So she says, all right, if you think like that, so you call a mantra and she comes. She's not bound by anything. She's always there. He shall dominate by her a prostrate world, a warrant for his deeds and his beliefs. She attests his right divine to lead and rule. So they are the masters. I said true gurus of a high order, whether in the field of Tantra or Vedanta, they are genuine, not what is recognized as gurus. And it's true that they can say something and it is fulfilled. Because it's a promise they are not making, but the Divine takes it upon himself and fulfills it. And so naturally the world prostrating, because if they start doing this, displaying this power, there would be no end to it. Last few lines. Or as a lover clasps his one beloved, Godhead of his life's worship and desire, icon of his heart's sole idolatry, she now is his and must live for him alone. She has invaded him with her sudden bliss, an exhaustless marvel in his happy grasp, an allurement, a caught ravishing miracle. So as we can see, when we see there are all the three yogas find a culmination here, but each separately. The crowned idea, the yoga of knowledge, reaches a point where that power comes within the limits of that idea. Another one is the yoga of works, that power that grants whatever he is promises, whatever he is dealings with the world, she takes upon herself. And the bhakti, where ultimately you reach a point where you are one with the beloved through that approach which you have taken. It may be Krishna, it may be Christ, it may be Rama, it doesn't matter. And you discover in that limited way, and life becomes a perpetual miracle. And yet, there is more that we shall explore Sunday.